The living room was quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. When Zoe stormed in, her smartphone in one hand and a printout, waving like a victory flag in the other. Her eyes gleamed with a theatrical satisfaction I'd never seen in my 17-year-old daughter, before the kind of calculated intensity she usually reserved for her performances. "Mom, I've got something interesting to share," she announced, her voice dripping with practiced contempt that made my stomach twist. She dramatically slapped the papers onto the coffee table between us, right in front of the family photo gallery. Nathan had built into our custom bookcase. "DNA result for my school project. Want to explain why Nathan isn't showing up as my biological father?" My hands froze mid-motion as I was arranging some client files. I carefully set them down on the side table, buying myself precious seconds to steady my racing heart. My counseling training kicked in deep breath. Stay calm. Address the emotion behind the accusation, but the mother in me was screaming. I'd known this day might come, but I hadn't expected it. Like this, hadn't expected the look of smug triumph on my daughter's face, like she was playing a villain in one of her school productions. "How long have you been lying to us?" Zoe demanded, crossing her arms with theatrical precision. "Does Dad even know, or have you been playing him for a fool? All these years too? Pretty ironic. Coming from someone who counsels teenagers about honesty and open communication." I felt the sting of her words as they hit their mark. My phone buzzed with a text, probably from a client in crisis, but for once I ignored it. Some crises were closer to home. "Sit down, Zoe," I said quietly, my counselor voice fighting with my mother voice. "This isn't a conversation we should have standing up. And it's definitely not one for whatever social media challenge you're filming this for." Her eyes widened slightly. I'd caught her off guard, but she quickly recovered and dropped into the armchair across from me, still radiating righteous anger. The afternoon light through our bay windows caught the slight tremor in her hands that betrayed her confidence as an act. "Fine," she huffed, tossing her cascade of dark hair. "Explain how you've been living a lie for the past 17 years. This should be good. Maybe I can use it for my next monologue. My name is Olivia Brennan, and my daughter had just unknowingly opened a door to a past I'd spent nearly 2 decades trying to keep firmly shut. Not because I was ashamed, I'd long since made peace with my choices, but because some truths are too heavy for children to bear. Some stories need to wait until the right moment, and this ambush with her phone, possibly recording, wasn't it? But Zoe, with her flair for drama both on and off stage, had forced my hand. I sat down across from her, folding my hands in my lap to hide their slight trembling. The irony wasn't lost on me, that I counsel families through exactly these kinds of revelations every day, yet here I was, struggling to find the right words for my own daughter. "First, I need you to understand something." I began, feeling the weight of every word. "Everything I've done, every choice I've made, has been to protect you and give you the best life possible. I've carried this secret like a stone in my heart for 17 years. Zoe rolled her eyes with theatrical disdain. "Save the therapist speech, Mom. I want the truth, not some carefully crafted emotional manipulation. You'd think you of all people would practice what you preach." Her words cut deep, but I pushed through the pain. "The truth," I said carefully, watching her eyes for any sign of softening, "is complicated. And before we go any further, I need to know exactly what you're hoping to accomplish here. Are you looking for answers, or are you just trying to hurt me? Because if there's one thing I've learned in my practice, it's that revenge rarely gives us what we really need." She faltered for a moment, her confidence wavering as her actress mask slipped. "I deserve to know who my real father is," she said finally. But her voice had lost some of its rehearsed edge. "Layla did one of these tests and found her birth family. She said I should try it too." I nodded slowly, my heart aching. "Yes, you do deserve to know, but not like this. Not as a weapon you can use to try to tear this family apart. Not as some viral video moment." "Family?" she laughed bitterly, though I could see tears threatening behind her anger. "What family? It's all built on lies. You spend all day helping other people's kids while feeding me. A lifetime of fiction." "No," I said firmly, leaning forward and looking directly into her. Eyes, the same hazel eyes that sometimes startled me with their familiarity. "It's built on love. Your father, the man who built this house around us, who has loved you fiercely every single day of your life. He knows you're not biologically his. He's always known. He chose you, Zoe. He chose us." Zoe's eyes widened, her carefully constructed narrative. beginning to crack like the stage makeup she wore for her performances. Nathan and I met when I was already pregnant with you, I explained, watching her face carefully as emotions flickered across it like scenes changing on stage. I was 22, scared, and so alone it physically hurt. I'd dropped out of college, lost most of my friends, and was barely making ends meet. He didn't have to stay. He didn't have to love us. But he chose to every single day, even when it was hard. But why didn't you tell me? Zoe's voice trembled, the theatrical anger, giving way to genuine vulnerability. Her hands twisted in her lap, no longer performing but truly feeling. I reached across the space between us, my heart swelling with relief when she didn't pull away from my touch. Her skin felt cold under my fingers, and I could sense the rapid pulse at her wrist. Because some stories need time, sweetheart. Because you needed to be old enough to understand. That family isn't just about DNA. It's about choice. It's about showing up day after day. It's about love that doesn't come with conditions. Then who is my biological father? She asked, her voice smaller. Now, the actress giving way to the child who still needed her mother. Her eyes, so much like his, searched mine desperately. I closed my eyes briefly, the familiar ache, spreading through my chest as memories washed over me, the campus theatre, the spring rain. His voice reciting Shakespeare as we walked home. His name was Jackson. Jackson Reed. And that's the part I've been trying to protect you from. I want to know, Zoe insisted. But the smugness was gone, replaced by something raw and vulnerable. Her phone lay forgotten on the table. I need to know. Is it why I love acting so much? Is that from him? I took another deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation. I'd hoped to have years from now when she was older, when she could better understand the complexities of love and ambition, and the choices we make when we're young and believe we're invincible. I met Jackson when I was in college, I began, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside me. We were both in the university's theatre. Programs was the star, destined for greatness, everyone said. I was studying psychology but took drama as an elective. He was charming, brilliant on stage, ambitious, and God, I thought I was in love. We dated for nearly a year before I got pregnant. Zoe leaned forward, hanging on every word, her natural curiosity overtaking her anger. What happened? Was he awful to you? When I told him about the pregnancy, I paused, choosing my words carefully. Remembering her face at 5 years old, at 10, at 15, all the milestones Jackson had willingly missed. He made it clear he wasn't ready for that responsibility. He had planned law school following his father's footsteps, a career his parents had mapped out for him, a future that didn't include a baby. His acting was just supposed to be a college phase. He told me to take care of it, and when I refused, he disappeared from my life like he was exiting a stage. Just like that? Zoe whispered, hugging herself now. I nodded, feeling the old pain but no longer consumed by it. Just like that. I tried to contact him a few times, but he blocked my number, changed his email. His parents, your biological grandparents, Vivian and Howard, they told me to stay away, offered me money to keep quiet about the whole thing. They said I was ruining their son's future. Did you take it? Zoe asked, her eyes wide with an actor's appreciation for dramatic tension. No, I said firmly, straightening my shoulders. I didn't want their money. I couldn't be bought off. I wanted to give you a life filled with love, not secrets and shame. I dropped out of college, moved back home with my parents, and started working 2 jobs to prepare for your arrival. Later, I went back to school part-time to finish my psychology degree with you, napping in the back of lecture halls sometimes. I watched as Zoe processed this information her earlier, bravado completely gone. Her eyes, so like Jackson's, were now filled with something. Knew a mixture of curiosity and compassion that made my heart swell. But then, how did you meet Dad? I mean, Nathan? A small, genuine smile crossed her face at the thought of him, and I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. I was working at this little coffee shop, called Brood Awakening, 7 months pregnant with you and exhausted beyond words. My feet were swollen, my back was killing me, and I was terrified about how I'd manage once you arrived, I said, allowing myself to smile at the memory that had changed everything. Nathan was a regular customer, always quiet but kind, always left a good tip. He was working on the renovation of the shop itself, while running his own small architecture business. Zoe leaned forward, completely absorbed. Was it love at first sight? Not exactly, I laughed softly, remembering. One particularly busy morning, I was so tired and lightheaded. I nearly fainted while taking his order. I could feel the room spinning, the sounds blurring together. And then suddenly there were these strong, steady hands guiding me to a chair. Nathan helped me sit down, brought me water, checked my pulse with this calm, assured manner. He stayed with me until my shift ended, even though he had a client meeting that afternoon. He missed a meeting for you? Zoe asked, knowing how seriously Nathan took his professional commitments. He rescheduled it without hesitation. I nodded, my throat tightening with emotion. He said some things are more important than business. The next day, he came back with a small wooden stool. He'd made himself just the right height to help take pressure off my back while I worked. And he didn't care that you were pregnant with someone else's baby. Zoe's voice carried a note of wonder, her anger seemingly forgotten as she leaned into the story. He said it was like getting 2 miracles for the price of 1, I replied, feeling tears prick at my eyes as I remembered his exact words. Those were his exact words, Zoe. 2 miracles for the price of 1. He started coming by more often, always checking on me, bringing me healthy snacks because he'd read somewhere that pregnant women needed extra iron and folic acid. He'd sit in the corner with his blueprint drawings. And sometimes we'd talk about architecture, psychology, how spaces affect people's emotions, all the things he now integrates into his designs. Zoe's lip trembled. He really chose us? Like actively wanted us both? With his whole heart, I confirmed, remembering the certainty in Nathan's eyes when he'd proposed. We got married when you were 6 months old. He insisted on legally adopting. You spent hours researching the best attorney to make sure everything was done properly. He said he wanted the world to know. You were his daughter in every way that mattered. That's why his name is on your birth certificate, because he chose to be your father when biology didn't matter to him at all. The living room fell silent as Zoe absorbed this information. I could see the conflict on her face, the way her earlier certainty had crumbled in the face of a truth, far more complex than she'd imagined. Through the window, I watched the afternoon light, shifting across the special reading nook Nathan had designed just for her when she was 9 and becoming a bookworm. I remember when I was little, Zoe said, softly, and Dad built that miniature stage in the basement for my birthday. He spent weeks on it, working late after his regular jobs. He made real curtains and everything. I nodded, grateful for the memory. He wanted you to have a place to practice. He always said your talent deserved a proper space. I feel so stupid, she finally whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. I thought I was exposing this huge scandal for my TikTok channel. Layla and I had it all planned. I wanted to hurt you because I've been so angry lately about college applications and the scholarship, and I didn't even know why. I just needed somewhere to aim all these feelings. I moved around the coffee table to sit beside her, pulling her into my arms, feeling her body shake with sobs. The scent of her shampoo, the same brand she'd used since middle. School filled my senses as I held her. You're 17, sweetheart. Being angry is part of growing up. But next time, talk to me. I'm a counselor, yes, but I'm your mother first. Don't try to weaponize our history for social media views. She nodded against my shoulder, her tears dampening my blouse. Does Dad? I mean, is he going to be mad about the DNA test? And that I was going to post about it? No, I said softly, stroking her hair. Just as I had when nightmares woke her as a child. He's always known this day would come eventually. We both did. We just hoped you'd come to us first, that we could tell you the story together when you were ready to hear it, when there wasn't an audience involved. I want to hear it, Zoe said, pulling back to wipe her eyes, smearing her mascara. All of it. And I want Dad here too. I need to tell him I'm sorry. I smiled, reaching for my phone. I'll call him. He's probably finishing up at the Henderson renovation site. But before I dialed, I added, Zoe, remember this feeling. Remember how different the truth was from what you imagined. In my work, I see this every day, people making up stories about others' motivations that turn out to be completely wrong. Sometimes the stories we tell ourselves about other people's choices, they're not nearly as simple as we think. That's why dialogue matters so much. As I dialed Nathan's number, I watched Zoe sink back into the armchair. The DNA results forgotten on the coffee table. She looked younger suddenly, more vulnerable, like the little girl who used to beg for curtain call hugs after her elementary school plays. Her phone buzzed with text, probably Layla, wondering why the dramatic confrontation video wasn't online yet, but she ignored it. Nathan answered on the second ring, the sounds of construction in the background. Hey, love. Everything okay? I was just wrapping up here. Zoe took a DNA test, I said simply, my voice steady despite the emotion churning inside me. It's time for that conversation we've been preparing for all these years. There was a pause, then his warm, steady voice came through the line, as dependable as the structures he built. I'll be home in 20 minutes. Traffic's clear. We'll do this together, like we've done everything else. The certainty in his voice sent a wave of relief through me. 17 years together, and he still had the power to make me feel safe. With just a few words, I hung up and looked at Zoe, who was watching me with red-rimmed eyes, mascara smudged beneath them. He's on his way, I told her, reaching for a tissue to gently wipe her cheeks. Are you ready to hear the whole story, the parts that are harder to tell? She nodded, and I could see the change in her, the way her earlier defiance had transformed into something softer, more open. The actress had stepped aside, leaving just my daughter. Yeah, she said quietly. I think I am. I'm sorry about the whole social media thing. I've already texted Layla that it's off. 20 minutes later, exactly, Nathan was nothing if not precise. We heard his truck pull into the driveway. Zoe tensed visibly at the sound of his boots on the porch steps. Her earlier confidence completely dissolved. When he appeared in the doorway, still in his work, clothes with a light coating of sawdust on his shoulders, his eyes immediately found Zoe. Hey, shooting star, he said softly, using the nickname he'd given her after her first-grade play. He set his tool belt down by the door with a familiar clunk. Mom filled me in. Zoe's lip trembled. Dad, But before she could finish, Nathan crossed the room in 4 long strides and pulled her into a tight hug, enveloping her completely the way he had since she was small. It's okay, he murmured into her hair, his large hand cradling the back of her head. We've been waiting for this day. I just wish you felt you could come to us first. Instead of planning some big reveal. This isn't a play, kiddo. It's our life. I watched them embrace, my heart swelling with love for this man, who had walked into our coffee shop and, in choosing to help a dizzy pregnant stranger, had changed the entire blueprint of our lives. This man who had never once made Zoe feel like she was anything less than the center of his universe. When they finally pulled apart, Nathan kept one arm around Zoe's shoulders as he sat down beside her on the couch I'd picked out. But he had reinforced because furniture should last generations. The afternoon sun caught the silver beginning to thread through his dark hair. So, he said, looking between us with those steady eyes, that always saw through the facades people constructed. Where should we start? What has your mom told you so far? Mom told me about meeting you, Zoe said quietly, leaning into his solid presence. About how you chose us. About how you built that little stool for her at the coffee shop. Nathan smiled, his eyes meeting mine across the room, with a warmth that still made my heart skip. Best decision I ever made. But there's more to the story, isn't there, Liv? About what happened later? I nodded, knowing we had to tell her everything. No more protecting her from the harder truths. Yes, Zoe needs to know about what happened after. About Jackson's attempts to come back into our lives. Nathan's arm tightened protectively around Zoe's shoulders, but his voice remained calm, the voice of a man who understood that strong foundations required complete honesty. Zoe's head snapped up, her theatre-trained posture suddenly rigid with attention. What? He tried to come back? When? Why didn't you ever tell me this part? I took a deep breath, drawing strength from Nathan's steady presence across the room. The late afternoon sun streamed through the windows. He had specifically designed to capture the best natural light. When you were 5 years old, Jackson showed up at our door unannounced. You were at kindergarten. He'd seen a photo of you at his parents'. House they'd been keeping tabs on us through mutual friends in the theatre community, though I didn't know it at the time. What did he want? Zoe asked, her voice barely above a whisper, her fingers nervously tracing the embroidery on the throw pillow. Nathan had brought back from a business trip to Santa Fe. He said he'd made a mistake, I continued, the memory still vivid after all these years. My hands trembled slightly as I recalled the shock of seeing him standing on our porch, looking successful and polished in his expensive suit. He'd finished law school, started a successful career as a corporate attorney, got married to a woman from a wealthy family, but something was missing. He said he couldn't stop thinking about the daughter he'd abandoned, about the path not taken. Nathan's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained controlled when he spoke. Tell her what really triggered it, Liv. She deserves the whole truth. I nodded, looking directly at Zoe. He'd seen you in a community children's theatre production of Peter Pan. You were just a lost boy with 2 lines. But apparently you stole every scene you were in. Someone had mentioned you were my daughter, and he realized who you were. He said seeing you on stage was like seeing himself at that age that your talent was undeniable. My acting, Zoe whispered, her eyes widening with realization. That's from him. That's why I've always loved it so much. He was brilliant on stage, I acknowledged softly. But talent without character is ultimately hollow, Zoe. Remember that. Nathan cleared his throat. Tell her what you told him, Liv. I've always thought it was the most powerful thing I've ever heard you say. I reached across the coffee table to take Zoe's hand, feeling the calluses from her hours of set construction work for the drama department. I told him he'd lost the right to be your father the day he walked away. That being a parent isn't something you can decide to do only when it's convenient, or when you suddenly discover shared interests. Your dad, Nathan, he'd been there for every moment, every skinned knee, every nightmare, every triumph. He'd built your crib with his own hands, stayed up all night when you had fevers, taught you to ride a bike, and built that little stage in our basement. He was your father in every way that mattered. Did Jackson fight you on it? Zoe asked, her eyes darting between us. He threatened to take us to court, Nathan answered, his voice steady despite the emotion I could see in his eyes. Said he had resources now, could prove he was the biological father, and demand partial custody. He talked about special arts programs. He could get you into connections he had in the theatre world. Zoe's eyes widened with a mixture of horror and fascination. What did you do? Did you have to go to court? We prepared to fight with everything we had, I said, simply remembering the sleepless nights, the consultation with attorneys, the sick feeling of potentially losing control over our daughter's well-being. We had years of documented abandonment, proof that he rejected any responsibility when I was pregnant. Plus, Nathan had legally adopted you, with proper termination of Jackson's parental rights. But more importantly, Nathan added, squeezing Zoe's shoulder with his strong, calloused hand, you were old enough to be affected by any custody battle. We weren't going to put you through that trauma. Just because Jackson suddenly decided your theatrical talent made you worth knowing, we weren't going to let you become a prize to be won in some legal battle. He backed off eventually, I continued, remembering the final confrontation in our attorney's office. I think he realized that pursuing it would only hurt everyone involved, especially you. But he did make one request that we considered reasonable. What was it? Zoe asked, completely absorbed in our story now. He asked that when you were old enough to understand, we tell you the truth. Tell you that he regretted his choices, that he'd grown up, and realized what he'd thrown away. I paused, studying my daughter's expressive face, the face that could convey so much emotion on stage. We agreed, but on our terms when we felt you were ready, not when it suited his conscience. Zoe was quiet for a moment, processing everything. The setting sun cast long shadows across the living room, illuminating the family photos that lined the custom shelves. Nathan had built a visual timeline of our life together. She stood up suddenly and walked over to examine them, her fingers lingering on a frame containing her first theatre award. Do you know where he is now? She asked, her back still to us, her voice struggling for casual curiosity but betraying her emotional turbulence. Nathan and I exchanged a look across the room, a silent communication born of years navigating life's complexities together. Yes, I said carefully, choosing my words with both professional and maternal care. He's still in the area, actually. He became quite successful, has his own law firm downtown, specializing in corporate law. Reed, Washburn and Associates. You've probably seen their building with the blue glass facade. The one with the rooftop garden. Zoe turned, her eyes wide. That's his firm? I pass it on the bus to theatre rehearsals all the time. I nodded. That's his. He has 2 other children with his wife, a boy, and a girl, younger than you. I believe they're around 10 and 12 now. My half-siblings, Zoe whispered, testing the words like an actress trying out unfamiliar dialogue. She returned to the couch, sitting between us now. Instead of apart, her body language showing her instinctive need for our support. Biologically, yes, Nathan said gently. His architect's handshans that had built our home, and countless special projects for Zoe over the years, reaching out to cover hers. But Zoe, I want you to understand something. Important just because you share DNA with someone doesn't mean they have a right to be in your life. That's your choice to make when and if you're ready. Family is like a building, it needs a solid foundation. Biology is just one type of foundation and often not the strongest one. Zoe looked up at him, tears gathering again in her eyes. But you'll always be my real dad, right? No matter what, even if I get curious about him. Nathan pulled her close again, his own eyes glistening in the fading light. Always shooting star. Nothing could ever change that. Not DNA tests, not biology, not even if you decide someday you want to meet him. I'm your dad because I love you, because I've been there, because we've built a life together, that's what matters. I watched them together, my heart full to bursting, remembering all the moments that had led us here, the day Nathan had first held Zoe, his eyes full of wonder. Her first steps taken toward him with complete trust. The father-daughter dances the bedtime stories with voices for each character. The countless trips to rehearsals and auditions the way he'd learned to apply stage makeup when I was working late. The custom-built desk that adjusted. As she grew, all the thousands of small moments that had built their unshakable bond. Something else you should know, I added softly. Jackson has been anonymously contributing to the community. Theatre scholarship fund for years. The directors don't know, but I recognized his company as the donor. I think in his own way. He's been trying to support your passion without disrupting your life. Zoe absorbed this information with an actress's thoughtful contemplation. That's complicated. I don't know how to feel about that. You don't have to know right now, I assured her, slipping back into my counselor voice momentarily. Feelings take time to process, especially complex ones. I feel so stupid, Zoe said, finally wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing more mascara. I thought I was going to expose this huge scandal on social media, but instead, you learned that family is more complicated and beautiful than just biology. I finished for her, smoothing her hair back from her tear-stained face. That love is a choice we make every day. As a counselor, I've seen many families. Zoe and the strongest ones aren't always connected by blood. The DNA test, Nathan added, reaching over to the coffee table, where the papers still lay. It doesn't change who we are. It doesn't erase our history or diminish our love for you. If anything, it just confirms what I've always known, that choosing to be your father was the greatest gift of my life. Better than any building I've ever designed. Zoe reached for the envelope still sitting on the coffee table, picking it up with trembling fingers. The room had grown darker as evening settled in, and Nathan reached over to switch on the lamp he'd retrofitted from an old theatre. Spotlight a birthday gift for Zoe last year. Can we throw this away? She asked, looking down at the DNA results. Or maybe I could use it differently. Not as a weapon, but as, I don't know, something else. I smiled, feeling tears prick at my eyes. Of course. It's your story to tell now, however you choose. We watched as Zoe stood up and moved to the center of the room. With the natural instinct of a born performer, she held the papers up dramatically, then began to tear them not in anger, but with deliberate, almost ceremonial movements. Instead of letting the pieces fall into the trash, she let them flutter to the floor around her in a circle. Scene, she said softly, using the actor's term for ending a performance. I think I want to write a play about this someday. About chosen family. About how the truth is always more complex than we imagine. The pride I felt in that moment was overwhelming, not just for her talent, which clearly echoed Jackson's, but for her emotional intelligence, which was all her own. We understand, I assured her, recognizing the therapeutic value in her improvised ritual. Growing up means questioning things, trying to figure out who you are. That's normal and healthy. But next time you have questions about your past, come to us first. We've never wanted to hide anything from you. We just wanted to protect you until you were ready for the whole truth. Nathan nodded in agreement, and now that everything's out in the open, we can talk about what you want to do next. If you have questions about Jackson, about your biological heritage, we'll help you find those answers when you're ready. No rush, no pressure. That performing scholarship application, I added gently. The one that needs family medical. History, we can help you complete it accurately now. And if you want to explore your theatrical genetics further, that's okay too. Zoe shook her head, kneeling to gather the torn pieces of paper. I don't think I want to know more right now. Maybe someday, but she looked between us, her expression softening into something genuine and unperformed. Right now, I just want to be here with my real family. I have that big audition next week, and I'd rather focus on that than on biology. I moved to help her collect the papers, and Nathan joined us on the floor. Together, we gathered the fragments of the test that had threatened to break us. but had instead revealed our strength. The three of us remained there in the living room as the evening settled fully around our home, our family stronger for having weathered the storm together. You know, Nathan said thoughtfully as he placed the last of the torn papers in the recycling bin. Foundations can develop cracks over time. It's normal, expected even. But a good builder doesn't tear the whole structure. Down they repair, reinforce, make it stronger than before. Zoe smiled at the metaphor, so typically Nathan. Is that what we did today? Reinforced our foundation? That's exactly what we did. I confirmed, feeling a profound sense of professional satisfaction and maternal love intertwining. Zoe's DNA test, meant as a weapon, had instead become a bridge to understanding, a reminder that the bonds that matter, most aren't the ones we're born with, but the ones we choose to nurture and protect. Later that night, after Zoe had gone upstairs to call Layla and explain why there would be no viral video, Nathan and I sat on the custom deck he'd built off our bedroom, his arm around my shoulders as we looked up at the stars through the pergola. He'd designed to frame our particular view of the night sky. "You okay?" he asked softly, his fingers tracing gentle patterns on my shoulder. I nodded, leaning into his familiar warmth. Better than okay, I think. I think this needed to happen. Maybe not exactly the way it did, but Zoe needed to know the truth. She's stronger than we give her credit for. This will make her an even better performer, having lived through something real and complex, just like her mother. Nathan mused, his voice full of admiration. The way you handled that, it was like watching you in your element, using all those counseling skills right where they matter most. I turned to look at him, this man, who had stepped into our lives and chosen to make us his family when he could have walked away. "Thank you," I whispered, feeling the words. Were inadequate for what I needed to express, for everything, for loving us both so completely, for building not just a house for us but a home. He smiled, the corners of his eyes, crinkling in the way I'd loved for almost 2 decades. Thank you for letting me, for trusting me with your heart. And with Zoe's. Some projects are special. You two have always been my masterpiece. Through the open window, we could hear Zoe moving around in her room, probably rehearsing lines for her upcoming audition. The sound was so familiar, so precious a reminder of all the ordinary moments that made up our extraordinary love story. "Do you think she'll want to meet him someday?" I asked quietly, my counselor's mind already preparing for that possibility. "Jackson?" Nathan was quiet for a moment, considering the question with his usual thoroughness. "Maybe. And if she does, we'll support her. But I think today showed her something important, that the truth isn't always what we expect it to be. And sometimes, the family we choose is stronger than the family we're born into. Either way, we'll be here for her." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace settle over me as I watched a shooting star trace across the night sky. The secret I'd carried for so long wasn't a secret anymore, and somehow that made everything clearer, lighter. Our family wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was built on choice, on love, on the daily decision to be there for each other. Zoe's DNA test, meant to break us apart, had only brought us closer together. It had shown her and reminded us that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who stay, who choose to love us through every storm, who build a life with us one moment at a time. As Nathan and I sat there under the stars he'd framed so perfectly, I thought about all the paths that had led us here, every choice, every struggle, every moment of doubt and faith. And I knew with absolute certainty that we had created something beautiful. A family bound not by DNA, but by something far stronger, the power of unconditional love and conscious choice. From inside, we heard Zoe call out, "Mom, Dad, can you help me run lines for a minute?" Nathan and I exchanged smiles and rose together, heading back inside to the daughter, who had chosen us just as surely as we had chosen her.